Hello, I'm Stephen Hunt, and this is Dodging Bullets, the Insolvency Practitioner's Guide to Surviving the Week. My guest in this episode is Marvee-Lisa Booker, the CEO of Postworks. Good morning, Marvee-Lisa.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let me start with one word question. Peanuts?
I'd probably say no thanks.
What happened last week in Budapest?
So at the R3 annual, I tucked in some chia pudding that was labelled with hazelnuts. It was not hazelnuts. And I did a little detour to A&E via ambulance with a swollen throat. But I did still come back and get every one of my 6 minutes in for the opening of the gala dinner. So there's a joke there, isn't there, about me doing anything for peanuts or something like that, I'm sure.
Well, I thought you were going to talk about the Hungarian health system. What's it like compared with the NHS?
Well, I was in and out relatively quickly. I mean, they didn't really tell me what was going on when I was in the back of the ambulance. I was just sort of being injected and on an IV, and I had no idea what was happening. So they did most of the work in the ambulance, and then I was just in for observation in the hospital. But I decided to take myself out because I, of course, had the gala dinner to do, so I wasn't going to miss it.
Well, you performed very well. You said doing anything for peanuts. I was more thinking about, you posted that it wasn't the worst conference you'd ever been to. So I was more interested in what was worse than that.
That's a fair point, actually. We work with a lot of different sectors. I shan't name any by sector because then people would know. But safe to say, the insolvency industry, it definitely is my favourite in terms of people to deal with. So we like it very much.
You old smoothie, you.
Yeah,
okay.
I know.
Go on then, do your advert. So the purpose of the podcast is to talk all things from the insolvency practitioner point of view. So what do Postworks do for IPs? What's your service?
Well, 8 years ago, we started Postworks because we noticed something a bit strange, and that was that organisations were handling some of the most sort of sensitive and legally consequential communications, but still doing it very manually. They didn't have a lot of options available to them by way of innovation. So at the firms that we work with, so IPs, legal teams, we do a lot in high court enforcement, debt recovery, credit collections. Of course, you live and die by proving what happened. But yet the systems around communications are really fragmented, often quite manual, and normally held together by someone's best intentions and a Karen with a spreadsheet. So that's kind of effectively what we've aimed to fix. So yes, we do put paper into an envelope if a notice to creditors needs to go via the post. We also do it via email as well. So we had an insolvency practitioner reach out to us and go, we've got 600,000 creditors that need emailing. If we do it the way we've been doing it currently, it's going to take 2 weeks and we're going to be past the statutory deadline. Can you help us? And so we built out our digital communication platform. We got those emails sent in 12 hours. Any creditor that got had a bounce on the email, we auto followed up with a letter. And then we evidenced the whole thing. So whether you could go down to individual name level and just check that this particular creditor did in fact receive their communication. So effectively, whether it's inbound communication, outbound communication, both physical and digital, effectively if you're a Postworks customer, you never have to wonder, did it get sent and can we evidence that we sent it? And that just removes a lot of ambiguity and headache for our customers where evidence is king effectively and compliance is king.
So what came first, Postworks or service to insolvency practitioners? Were you doing this already and just stumbled upon the insolvency market?
Yes, we were. So Postworks came first, and we were focused on innovation within Post, which everyone said was a rubbish idea. But effectively in the UK today, we're still sending around 8 billion letters. And unless you're a sizable organisation and willing to invest six figures in software, it's actually quite tricky to do in a cost-effective way. So we built out Postworks, and all the focus was around the software. So can we make it as easy as possible for people to do what they need to do when it comes to sending communication? And we always kind of liken our technology to the tyres that you put on a car. You don't put second-hand tyres on the car because they're the pieces of rubber that are touching the road. Likewise with our software, and that's the bit that people are interacting with. They don't really care about how quickly you can put paper into envelopes in our machines. So we built that out, made sure it was easy to use as possible. And we started working with a personal insolvency firm way back when we started. That was quite a significant contract for us. And then we kind of, through word of mouth and referrals, just grew into the insolvency market. And we built a lot of our functionality around what the insolvency practitioner needs as well. So they said they needed proof of postage and that certificate of posting. They said they need to be able to build creditor pack. So a lot of what you get today within Postworks has been shaped by the insolvency industry. And it has actually then meant that it's solved a problem for a lot of the other sectors that we work with as well.
I was going to ask, who was your first insolvency practitioner customer? Who was the first firm?
Wilson Field, who are part of FRP now.
Oh, okay. So that was 8 years ago? Or
yeah, I think 7 years ago, when we started working with Wilson Field. Yeah.
And who are your sort of clients now? I don't know what sort of market penetration you have in the insolvency market. I don't know if you've got any competitors. A lot of questions thrown at you.
Yeah, we work with most. So everyone from Interpath, A&M, Teneo, Begbie's Trainer, right the way down through to some of the boutique firms and even the sole practitioners as well. So we don't really discriminate in terms of being able to use our platform. You can send one communication, you can send 500,000. We don't really mind. It's a self-service platform. So depending on different communication for those organisations can do what they want. And we do have insolvency firms that are sending SMS to creditors as well as part of the communication flow and evidencing that so that they can show they've made every reasonable effort to communicate to creditors. And I think that can be quite helpful, particularly when you have a lot of consumers, perhaps that are part of the case that you need to communicate to.
And the final part of the advertorial part is how much? What's it called? What's the entry level cost? How do you get started with this sort of thing?
So you can create an account on the platform for free. Sending the postage, for example, via Postworks, is more cost effective than doing it in-house. So usually you'd save about 20 to 30% in comparison to doing it yourself. But I think the main thing that drives a lot of the uses, particularly in insolvency, but also legal, is being able to disperse the cost of the case really easily. So we actually did a case study with Teneo recently. They're actually now recovering up to 97% of the costs when communicating to creditors, whereas if it's being done in-house, you'll know that then as a category 2 disbursement, you've trying to evidence it and log it, and it's painful. Whereas in our platform, they could just upload it, stick in a case code, and it's just then really easy to disperse that back and know that that's not quietly landing into operating expenses when it shouldn't be.
Okay. Do you get any feedback from regulators? Have the regulators looked at your product and commented on it at all?
We have been speaking to a couple of regulators across a few different sectors, actually, because there is actually now a new postage service which sits in between first and second class. I am a bit of a postal nerd. I am fun at parties, I can assure you, as you would have seen at the R3 conference. But it's a lot more cost effective than sending it first class, but it's not currently regulated under Ofcom. But we think it makes sense to allow organisations to be able to use it. That's not currently in the guidelines, only first and second class is mentioned. But when you've got the speed there and it's a lot more cost effective, I think with the rising cost of everything as well, we think it makes sense that regulators start considering adapting that alongside being able to use email as well to communicate to creditors, particularly if it can be evidenced in the same way. Then, I think our question would be, well, why not?
I think a note to self, I think postal nerd may make it into the title of this podcast.
No, digital comms all the way.
Wear your badge with pride. Beyond post, do you think beyond post, email or anything else around that sort of sector?
Yes, so we actually send more digital communications on a daily basis than we actually put in the post now. And that's as a result of kind of being able to use our platform to say, okay, well, I want to send a letter or I want to send an email. And if the email doesn't get there, then I want to send a letter. And our customers can effectively pick and choose how they want to communicate. And of course, it makes sense if they can to pick the most cost-effective form of communication first and only send a letter if it's needed afterwards. And then, of course, we handle the inbound post as well, which has been a high growth area for us because it's not unusual in insolvency or legal firms where fee earners or partners are actually still touching paper post, even if they've got an internal mail room. So I actually sat last week and spoke to a partner of quite a sizable firm who actually said, yes, it's handleable by the mail room, and then it gets scanned in, and then the paper copies make their way to me anyway. And I think that's wild in 2026 that partners touching paper. He just shouldn't be, or she shouldn't be.
Yes, I mean, we've in my firm, we've changed the registered office of our insolvencies to your postal address, so we get the post quicker. It goes, anything served on the company where it goes straight to you and gets straight to us electronically rather than going to us to you to back again. So we've certainly changed our systems to adapt to that. Hopefully we get good marks out of 10 for being a good customer.
Absolutely. And no paper cuts for you as well. So you're welcome.
I used to live for the paper cuts.
Battle scars.
Battle scars of the day in the office, yeah. Do you get involved in anything, or had you thought about stuff such as the portals that IPs have? Have you looked at those at all?
Like turnkey IPS?
Yeah, the turnkey IPS is the main one. I just wondered if you'd had any discussions, inputs, or thoughts about how you could be involved in portals, or maybe IPs could improve their portals.
It's something that is on our radar, and it's actually something that a few firms have spoken to us about, actually, in terms of how can we support with not just the communication that's going out and in, but actually interactions that they may need to have. So I can't say too much at the moment, but there is some work in the pipeline around that. And of course, we do, from a case management perspective, turnkey IPS are building an integration in with the Postworks platform as well, because it's, again, driven a lot by a shared customer demand that integration takes place, because IPs want everything to just work seamlessly together, and fair enough, we agree.
Okay, I'll come back to the portal in a second, but just on that point, I mean, do you integrate with other stuff such as virtual cabinets?
Yes, we do. Virtual Cabinet and DocuSoft have both built integrations with Postworks, both for inbound and outbound. So if you get your inbound mail via us, it will just land straight into your VC inbox in tray.
Okay. I can't imagine you do anything else. On the portal, just come back to the portal, we've been looking at the portal for things such as live SIP9 data, so broadcasting way beyond the sort of minimum annual report type stage and giving creditors lots of information, not necessarily pushing notifications to them to say this is there, but when they do happen to go on the portal, our thought process, it'd be nice to go on there and see a lot of information that we had already posted up. So let's say we're just posting receipts and payments monthly, updating it, lots of other stuff that we can do electronically. Key events such as interviews with directors have taken place, not what's actually happened, through to we have made claims, we've issued proceedings, court dates, that type of stuff. So we were just looking to use the portal as a genuine platform to give the stakeholders more information. And it may well be that Postworks can be part of that in some way.
That's really interesting, actually. And yes, we're probably not a million miles away from being able to provide something like that. We've just completed a rollout for Ramsay Healthcare. They're one of the largest private healthcare organisations in the UK. And as part of that, we're handling all of their outbound communication, but also providing a portal to them where the patients can access information that has been sent to them. And that has transformed the way that patients are experiencing interacting with that organisation. And likewise, sounds like it would do the same in this scenario. So we can definitely pick up a conversation a little bit more on what that could or should look like, or what best would look like. But we're probably not a million miles away from being able to do that.
Okay, let's change topic. Madonna used to be known as Madonna. Then there was lots of Madonnas. There are no more Marvee-Lisas. What's your background? Where do you come from? How did you get to be CEO of Postworks?
So personal background or professional background? What do you want to know?
Whatever you wish to reveal to the 6 people listening to this podcast.
So to be honest, my journey probably started when I was a little bit younger, which I don't think I really gave a lot of credit to. But yes, I am. I think if you Google Marvee-Lisa, I think I am the only one. And the name itself comes from Filipino origin. So my part Filipino, part Scottish, which basically means I will cook for 20 people without notice. But I do also have strong opinions on Lefroy whiskey. And maybe I'm a bit unhinged. But anyway, the name is kind of, the Lisa part was my dad wanting something a little bit less foreign sounding. Marvee comes from the Philippines. And when I was a teenager, my mum actually had her own business. She had a little cafe, which she named after me on the local high street. But she was a lot better at cooking than she was at business. And when I was 15, I saw that she was putting in a lot of hours. It was very difficult. It was very stressful on us as a family. We were all kind of working, but it never really felt like we had any money. And I grew up relatively sort of poor. So we I had free school dinners that we didn't really, I always just remember our fridge being empty when I was a child. So I don't come from a background of privilege at all. But when I was 15, I remember I saved all of the dockets from all of the orders that had been taken in the cafe, and I took them home and I built out this spreadsheet and I listed everything that she sold and the price next to it. And then I went through all of her wholesale invoices and I added in the costs of everything. And what I didn't know at the time at 15, but what I was building was my first P&L to try and understand how much money was she making and how could we make more. And I calculated that, if she changed the pricing on a few different things, then, it would kind of deliver an extra 80,000 a year, which would have been transformational. Unfortunately, she dismissed me as a silly teenager, and I'm not saying that this was the cause of it, but eventually she did declare bankruptcy. And, my last memory of that working environment was, a notice on the door that had basically said, we're shutting up shop today. And that's how her employees found out as well, which for me I took away from that was, for me, that was quite heartbreaking because a lot of the team had been with her for several years. And I think I was really disappointed that she didn't at least kind of get them together and go, look, this is what's happened. We're at the end. I'm really sorry, but it is what it is. And I think there's a lot of value in being able to look people in the eye when times are difficult. And that's something I definitely take into my leadership journey anyway.
Well, that's good. So, I mean, it's interesting. I was in my teenage years and I did a similar thing. I wrote a program for my parents' business. I think they tolerated him a little more, but my mum had a great skill in pushing as many buttons as possible at the same time until it broke and then dismissed the whole thing as useless. So yeah, beta testing with my mother was some experience. But I remember looking at a list of things you bought and the list you sold and saying, that can't be one minus the other, can't be the profit. There must be some other way. So just trying to understand, there must be some accounting rule of P&L essentially, and the difference between that and the balance sheet. Working out for myself without anyone teaching me is a very good experience to have. It just gives you an underlying instinct, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think prior to starting Postworks, I was working at a PLC, and the CEO was the only person who was allowed to walk through the front door. So we all used to have to enter and exit via the fire escape. So there was like 800 staff going either side of this big industrial building. We didn't even have any daylight in it either. And you weren't actually allowed to walk along the corridor of outside the executive floor. So if you wanted to, so that's how bad it was. It was that you'd have to go down steps on one side, walk across the next landing so that you didn't walk outside the executive floor, which what I thought was bizarre. And for us, when we started talking about Postworks, a lot of our dream was around creating a business that was good to work with and good to work for. Incidentally, we handle communication. It's really a byproduct of our values, and we care very much about customer experience. And our actual mission, if you go to any of our offices, it's on the wall everywhere. It is to be a pleasure to do business with. And it's not intentionally fluffy. We've got really big growth goals. We've had amazing and incredible growth. Our net revenue retention percentages are enviable. However, if you are accepting a delivery from a delivery driver, you know that in order to be a pleasure to do business with, on a hot day, you can offer that guy a drink, for example. Or if you're in the finance team, we pay our invoices early or on time. So regardless of how you interact with us in Postworks, you can have the expectation that we would be a pleasure to do business with. Likewise, if you're on my team, you should expect that, but I would expect that from them as well. So it's something that everybody can get behind, and was really kind of born out of not being able to walk through the front door. So naturally, amongst the many other benefits we offer our staff, we let them come through the front door as well. Yeah,
be normal, I suppose. It's quite a skill, watching other people when you're young, growing up and seeing leaders. I remember when I was 21, 22, I was working in a bank, and there was a second-ranking director who was brilliant. He'd walk the floor all day, every day, just talking to people. He'd just make the bank run. Other people sat in their offices and waited for someone to you. And I had the pleasure of 25 plus years later, I bumped into him on a golf course in Wales. I just saw him from afar and I thought, I know you. And he was he might have been 80 by then. So I just tapped him and said hello, didn't know who I was. I explained that when I was 21, he'd inspired me, and he was sort of visibly shocked. But it's nice to have that moment. But yeah, the good guys stand out.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And I'm really fortunate that I've had those experiences as well. They've not all been people not letting me walk through the front door. Handling.
I let my staff go through the front door as well. Normally only if they carry me on their shoulders.
That's very good of you, Steve. Remain humble, please.
It's the least I could do. As I said, you've got to be normal, and you've got to they'll remember these life lessons. Okay, so how did you go from that to Postworks? Was that in a similar industry?
So it was, but my background is actually across software, data, print, mail, and I've always been quite passionate about people communicating correctly, actually, because words have the ability to tear down, they have the ability to build up. And, we see in a lot of the communications that goes out, you can have communications that gets results and those that don't. And so alongside kind of coming out of that PLC, which was in the postal sector, outsourcing post wasn't really new. That's been around since the 70s. As I said, we decided that there was a clear gap in the market for there to be some innovation sort of within that. So as well as starting to handle some of the post, we also then started to get involved, or we realised that there was a template problem. So every communication now that we send or receive has started life as a template somewhere, and that also needs to be maintained and auditable and accurate and so on and so forth. So we solved that problem too. And so we've evolved quite a lot over the last 7 years, from kind of really starting out as somewhere with a bit of innovation to be able to send outbound post, whereas now we're a kind of fully end-to-end, fully managed communications platform for regulated businesses. So we don't really get involved in marketing mail. We're there fully for critical communications.
Other research I've done on you, I see you're the winner of the Everywoman Tech Innovator Award. That wasn't very difficult research. It's in your title on LinkedIn. But I did look at other winners, and it's quite an impressive little group. And again, that showed me that the emphasis on the nerd, on the tech, not on the postal. I can see your technology background. Do you have wider interests in technology? Is there hobbies around that, or do you do something completely different away from your day job?
No, this is where I sound like such a loser. So a lot of the books that I read are around communication and the words that people use. I'm obviously a Simon Sinek fan as well, really subscribe to the servant leadership side of things. So actually a lot of my hobbies, air quotes, are based around people and growth and personal development, because I think really something that we actually say, or I say internally anyway, is that we're actually in the people business, and it just so happens that we handle communication. And that's probably the thing that gets me out of bed every day, as opposed to the growth is nice and I like it and it's all lovely, but it's not. It's really just a byproduct of what I like doing, which is running a business that is different and handles and does things differently. And I really am proud of the fact that people come into work every day and feel like they are part of something that's different, and they are treated well and they are valued, because it is quite unusual and it shouldn't be.
So there's no dangerous sports? You're not doing...
I ski, but I don't know that that's dangerous.
Well, you do gala dinners dangerously and end up in hospital. so
that's it, yeah. That's it. I play Russian roulette with a bag of Revels just before I'm about to speak, and that usually gets the adrenaline going.
That's very good. Yeah, so I understand that. Sometimes it's good to get a break, but other times, if you're CEO, you can't have a break. Your hobbies are partly to do with your work, and it's just part of your life. How do you see growth? Because, the insolvency market's only so big. Are you going to go international? I don't know if you've got any international stuff, or you're going to... I know you're in other markets, but what's the plans for you guys next few years?
Yeah, so growth, more of the same, really. We have, in terms of our growth, we've gone from something like 15 people just 4 or 5 years ago to nearly 70 people now, 96% CAGR over the last 3 years, EBITDA CAGR. And we're given that most of our clients aren't in any form of contract, it's really impressive. It's really impressive that we've continued to grow kind of on top of that. And a lot of that has come from not just new business, but retaining the customers that work with us already. So it's more of the same. There is some international scope there as well, which we've been looking at and testing some international markets. There's a lot more focus on the technology as well. And as I mentioned, we've had a few kind of firms approach us and say, you do this for us, you do this for us. And actually, if you could wrap this up in a nice kind of online platform to do X, Y, and Z, then that would be transformative. And so some of that is centered specifically for insolvency and insolvency workflows. But as you mentioned, we also work with a number of other sectors as well. So, and there's a lot of headroom for growth within those sectors. So more of the same, a lot more focus on the technology, but also helping people to go on that digital transformation journey. Because despite the fact that email was introduced in the 1970s, which was quite a long time ago, even before I was born, we see sizable organisations trying to communicate to creditors, for example, and they're just copying and pasting email addresses into the BCC inbox. And you think, how can something be around for 50 years and that's still how you're doing it? So we do tend to find that there is an appetite for digital transformation, but usually organisations don't really know how to make that happen, or they're using legacy systems that don't make it necessarily quite so easy. So we have to kind of slot around that. So there's a lot more focus on helping that digital transformation journey as well, and working closely with our customers to achieve the goals around that.
I mean, everyone's looking at AI at the moment in every aspect. So yes, it's, and not necessarily in a good way from some of the conversations I've been party to. But is that going to be a challenge to you, or is that going to enhance your business? Do you have to be leading it to stay in the game, or do you think it's going to lead to a lot more opportunities?
I always think there's opportunity, and there's always the argument for cannibalization. And people said the same thing to us when we introduced digital communication, and the argument that would it eat into the postal revenue, and the answer is yes, it will, but it's going to happen. It's inevitable. And so you can either lead people on the journey to adopt it in a way that is meaningful and works for them and also keeps them compliant, or not. And I think a lot of what Postworks, if I was going to kind of summarize what Postworks sells, it's confidence that you're doing things in the right way. And we take that responsibility really seriously. So, of course, we'll be looking at introducing AI into our products. It'll be in a controlled way. It'll be in a way where, not only do we have control over it, but our customers have control over it. So they feel like they're kind of able to make the informed decisions about how they introduce it. But of course, when you look at things like the sheer volume of communication that comes back in, if you're an insolvency practitioner, for example, whether that's an email, a creditor just responding, to an email saying thanks, versus somebody sending in a proof of debt, there's a clear prioritization that needs to happen. And it will, of course, make life easier if a person doesn't have to do that. You want to be able to file away the noise and actually only work on the stuff that's meaningful and is actually going to drive value and is important to the case. So that's kind of one of the first areas that we'll look to introduce AI, but making sure that it's in a controlled way so that our customers don't have to worry about compliance. They don't have to worry, they don't lose that confidence, which is what they get from us in the first place.
I learned a phrase many years ago, which I've always used, which is people don't buy drill bits, they buy the holes that they make. They're not interested in the process. Is you have to focus on the service. In insolvency, the analogy is people don't want a creditor's voluntary liquidation. They want the end of the problem. And we may be selling CVLs, we may be selling administrations, but that's not what we're really selling. We're selling the hole that it makes. We're selling the solution. How we get there is really a matter for us as the professional. And I think that applies to pretty much all professions, industries, to focus on what's the customer need. Don't worry so much about how you get there. And the customer may not know they have this need. Your job is to anticipate the need. That's it. It's very simple, but you can get confused by the complexity or how interesting it is to understand the law behind a CVL or administration and procedure. But the customer isn't interested in that. Their transaction with you is fleeting. They want the service. They want, as you said, the tyres on the car. They don't need to know what they're made of and how they work. They just need to know that when they slam on the brakes or go around the corner, they work. And that's it.
I completely agree. And one of the things that I have a lot of phrases that I'm sure if you ever spoke to any of the team.
Go on then, nerd.
But I always talk about the Henry Ford quote of where he said, if I asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And I think there's a fine balance between understanding what the customer requires in terms of understanding their problem. But, if they didn't actually really want faster horses. They wanted the motor vehicle, the car. And so I think for me, it's always really important to get that balance between let's hear what the problem is and let's understand it first of all. We don't need to understand the technicalities. We just need to understand the impact of that problem, and then how can we fix it. And that has effectively been how our product has evolved and how we've seen the growth that we have, because we listen and understand. And so sometimes I can be a little bit strict when people will bring me things and they go, I've got this. And I'm like, okay, do you understand it? No, I thought you might. Well, okay, no, you go away and understand it first and then bring it back to me, because if you can't explain it to me, you haven't understood it. And if you haven't understood it, then we definitely can't sit here together and figure out how to fix it. So I've sent a lot of people away from time to time. They're kind of used to it now. So if anyone comes to ask me something internally, they would have first understood what the problem that they're trying to fix is first. But that's important to me, because I want customers to interact with team members from Postworks and make sure that they know that the person on the other end is understanding what their issue is.
I think the Henry Ford quote has been used for the argument customers are stupid. You put it so much more eloquently.
But we would never say that. You're a customer, Steve.
I know. I'm stupid as it comes. I have no idea what's going on. But so I push the button, it goes. I'm happy. There you go. So, I mean, we're getting towards the end now. You're a bit young for legacy and succession planning and things like that, but maybe you just hide it well with the flower in your hair.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
How do you envisage it going forward? Do you see it as Postworks PLC, Postworks International, Postworks Offshore Tax Haven? Is that all in your future? What's the grand plan, and how are you going to achieve that? What do you have any specific goals?
That's a really good question. So obviously we have a 5-year plan and a 7-year forecast and all these metrics that we measure against. We sit around the board table and we go through them. But there's likely a lot more software kind of in our future, which may look like separate entities. It really kind of depends on how testing goes and what how go to market goes effectively. For me personally, I mean, I'll be 40 this year, so obviously people won't be able to see that, but you're obviously looking very surprised. I've got 2 young children. I've got a 4 and a 6-year-old. So I'd like to be able to spend a tiny bit more time at home. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I love Postworks and I love the team and I love what we do. Personally, I've got some other goals as well, which kind of centre around some more sort of charity type work. So human trafficking victims is a particular area that is close to my heart. So, and being able to help, you need time, but unfortunately you also need money as well, and the practicalities around being able to support people in that situation. So hopefully in the not too distant future, I'll have the opportunity to do a little bit of that as well.
And then maybe get enough money to donate to a political party to cause chaos and things like that type of thing. So,
yeah, perhaps. Are you going to thinking about running? Are you, Steve?
I was thinking for you, in Vogue, it's always good. You secret offshore millionaires, that type of thing. Yeah, that's an ambition of everybody now to cause chaos in the UK by donating to the wrong party and standing well back and watching what happens. Good. Well, thanks very much. I know there's probably lots of more issues you could talk about, but if we end it there, you can get on with your busy day, and good luck to you. I think it's been a pleasure interviewing you. This has been Dodging Bullets. If you liked what you've heard, please like and subscribe in the usual way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.